the BBC did a report this morning, um, and they found that less than half of UK universities like provide any records of their sexual misconduct data. A lot of them use an umbrella term. Some of them do are a lot more specific, but a lot of them don't. In Wales, we've got 8 universities and over 1,000 sexual misconduct cases in the last 6 years. With all this in mind, why did you feel the need to set up Chin Up Cardiff?
Um, I think of an easier question to answer would be why not? Um, it, why did I set up Chin Up Cardiff? Because I've gone on so many rants about the things that you've just said. Um, and I eventually went full circle and realized, um, you know, actually there is a space, it is needed. I know that. Most people know that. If they have an experience of sexual assault or they work in mental health, um, then they know it's something that's missing. And so why not me? Why not me and my mates? Um, and yeah, it feels obvious, I think.
Are you surprised at those findings at all?
No, not in the slightest. Um, it- and that's what's known as well. There's a lot more than that. As I'm sure you're aware. Um, no, it doesn't shock me in the slightest.
So, what do you think universities need to be doing to address this? Why have you had to go and make a charity to sort this? Why aren't the universities kind of dealing with it themselves, if you like?
Um, so just to get the record straight, we're not a charity. We are a company. We hope to be a charity, but you need a minimum turnover of 5 grand to be one. So it's a goal, but we're not there just yet. Um, I mean, we are open to anyone over the age of 18. At the moment, we're just for women, but we are trying to expand that as quickly as we can. We just need to see the need for it, and then we'll do it. Um, and I think it's because it's taboo. No one wants to talk about it because it's uncomfortable and it's sad. And it's easy to hide behind lots of things, like the requirements for anonymity of survivors and things like that, which is valid, but in the sense of statistics and showing what's going on, I think it to universities or to any organization, it's embarrassing in a sense to admit that this is going on, and on such a grand scale. Um, and so if one university hides it, every university is going to hide it. Every organization is going to hide it because it's not nice to admit. Um, but hopefully we're coming into um, a nicer position now where actually being upfront is going to be a much better position to be in. And when everyone realizes that it's happening at every university, it's not that that one university is holding that shame. It's actually we can all come together and do something about it.
So, obviously, I said the report found that there's been at least 1,000 known cases across Wales. Why do you think there's been so many in the last 6 years? Have we not progressed as a society at all?
In the sense of sexual assault, no, not in the slightest. Um, there's a story at the moment or a campaign at the moment on I think it's Women's Aid or Rape Crisis UK. It's about the decriminalisation of sexual assault. And I think it's quite on point. We don't see it as something that, well, in theory, we see it as something that's a criminal act, but the justice system doesn't. Um, with the such few percentage of people making it through any stage of the process, it effectively is becoming decriminalized. And if we don't talk about it and we don't make that known and we don't talk about kind of the commonality of it, it's crazy. If you want some more stats, if you're a woman and you've been raped, then you are 1 in 2 likely to be raped again, which is crazy. Um, so that's a ridiculous stat. I think there's also something about 1 in 30 women each year are raped. So the likelihood is that you know someone that's been assaulted. And not only that, you know them within the past year, you know.
And do you think it's almost become normalized in a way?
Yeah, it's definitely normalized. You know, the reason I would go on these rants about all these things is because I actually have, I actually can't put a number to the number of friends I've helped go through this process and explain the process of the police system and all of these things. I can't think of how many friends that I've actually supported through that. And there's only so many times you want to do that before you just get angry. Um, and the more you learn about the system, the harder it is to kind of look the other way, or at least for me it was. Um, so I don't really know how much you know about the system itself or how much information you would like on it.
By
Um,
all means, give me as much as you want to give me.
okay. So, right. So there's a policy in place at the moment, and it's surrounding um kind of the privacy of victims. So there's privacy on two parts. There's privacy in terms of um third party material, so that includes your counseling notes. And then your other kind of digital privacy being your phone or your laptop or whatever. Now, if you go and you say, okay, I would like to prosecute, um, the response is that you will immediately be asked to relinquish both kinds of privacy. If you say no, the likelihood is that they will immediately drop the case and won't press any further. But what happens is if you say yes, then um, you are stuck in a gap. So if you choose to prosecute, you are then no longer able to access counselling because those counselling notes are shared in court. And not in the sense of little bits here and there. Um, very often the abuser or the alleged perpetrator is able to read the notes word for word, unredacted, which is humiliating and a complete breach of privacy and, in my opinion, human rights. Um, and so counsellors are refusing to take on survivors because they don't want to be in this position where they're gonna negatively impact the survivor's right to prosecute. Um, and yeah, so survivors are getting turned down from being able to have counselling. They don't know why, because they're not explaining this whole thing. Um, and not only that, there's a very kind of specific counselling that you need if you've been through trauma. So that's hard to come by in itself. Um, and so you can have something called pre-trial therapy, where you're allowed to talk about kind of your emotions or like the surface area level of things, but even those notes are still shared in court. Um, and so people end up in this position where they have to choose counselling or prosecution. And for the most part, that's either an impossible position to put someone in, but it just is an impossible situation to put someone in. And so a lot of the time, people are choosing counselling over prosecution, because they can't cope, um, which I'm sure that pretty much anyone would understand why you wouldn't be able to cope with that. Um, and um, so yeah, so people choose counselling. They're not allowed to prosecute, therefore, kind of continuing that rhetoric of it being decriminalised. Um, and so Chin Up Cardiff is kind of supposed to be this interim where it's not therapeutic, it's not counselling, it's literally a space for survivors to be. And it's that interim between counselling and maybe the court system. But we're not pushing for, it happens to be able to support those people, but any survivors, in any sense. So, yeah, so that was why it's originally created to bridge that little gap, it's a humongous gap. And so it's just so that people can come together, create a community, be valid, realize that their emotions or their experiences are actually shared with a lot of other people and they don't need to go through it alone. Very isolating to be a survivor of sexual assault. Because with it comes imposter syndrome and shame and all the other fun things like anxiety and depression and PTSD. And you're trying to navigate all those things at the same time as trying to work out what you truly want, which is impossible. And you end up having to go through just repeated rounds of invasion. If you've been sexually assaulted, that is kind of the lowest form of being invaded in your own consent and in your privacy and in your body. But then you're invaded again. Your digital privacy looked at, your counselling notes looked at. So every single time that you're trying to get to grips with something, you are kind of examined. And I just think it's wrong. So we are doing the support groups. And then the other section of what we're doing is we're trying to raise awareness of this particular policy. So there was an amendment made to it last year, May 2023, which basically was trying to say, oh, we fixed the problem. Now, in theory, they fixed the problem because they said, don't go after anyone's counselling notes unless absolutely necessary. But nothing physical was put into place to ensure that. So on the ground, everyone's been working in a certain sense for a very, very long time. So they're going to continue working and doing the exact same thing that they always have done. Now, what we're suggesting is there's a policy in Australia which is used, which Rape Crisis UK is trying to increase public backing for. And it means that there's a lot more rounds that have to be gone through. So, firstly, the alleged perpetrator must be arrested and charged. Secondly, a judge has to sign off to agree that counselling notes are necessary in court. Then all of the notes are redacted unless deemed absolutely necessary. And then they can be shared with both sides depending on, the system or the process that they're going through. But it doesn't bias towards anyone or against anyone. It's not biasing against the perpetrator in any sense. It just means that the victim is entitled to the privacy that I think I and most people would agree they're justified to have.
So what kind of impact do you hope Chin Up Cardiff will have?
So we're talking to lots of people at the minute, which is very interesting. But yeah, so we're hoping to get public backing for this policy. We are yeah, I guess trying to weave our way into as many things as we can. So we're, trying to access Welsh government and the big organisations based in Cardiff with this policy. Because I think there is issues at every single point, right? Through the whole process. Now, we've zoned in on one because there's a solution already provided. It's an easy thing to back. I personally can't see a reason as to why you wouldn't back it. And so this is the message that we're pushing at the moment. Try and get this as far and wide as we can. And then on the other half of it, just to support people, in any sense of the word, just to create a community. My experiences in mental health and psychology, and I think that myself and my team are able to facilitate that.
When you say you have a background in psychology, is that an undergraduate degree? Have you worked as a therapist? Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, of course I can. So therapists and counselors are far, far more qualified than myself. Which, nice to have goals and whatnot. But no, I am not a counselor, I'm not a therapist. So yes, I have an undergraduate degree in psychology from Bath Spa. And I've been working in some form of mental health for the past 5 years. Coming on 6 actually. But yeah, and that's all in varying degrees. So when I lived back in Bath, I was volunteering for a company called Off the Record, which is absolutely fantastic if anyone hasn't heard of it. 7 to 25-year-olds listening support, and you see a range of things that come through there. And it was just a lovely, lovely job. Lots of fun, and I think always humbling when a child shares something with you. It feels like I don't know, it just feels quite special to be told something that no one else knows, and to be trusted on that level, especially with a child. Um, but yeah, I think I kind of got a bit of a thirst for it from then, in terms of I just enjoyed doing something with my time that was for other people. Um, and I was getting a little bit bored over the summer, and I thought I actually have this space and this capacity to do something more. Um, and it just made sense, I think.
So what does an average support group meeting look like with Chin Up Cardiff? Like, what do you mean? It's not therapy, but it's also not. What would you say that you do in a nice, easy to understand way?
Yeah, that's okay. It's quite funny actually. I was talking to a flatmate the other day who was telling he was we were talking and he was saying, oh, so you got one of those serious meetings coming up. That's definitely not the impression, or even remotely what I'm going for. No, it's different depending on the month. So we've got board games this month. We'll be doing some planting workshops. We'll be going for walks, picnics, book clubs. Got even things like Christmas card decorating and all those sorts of things. It's not anything other than there's an activity and then the ability to speak to other people who've been through similar experiences to yourself.
So
And
it's a distraction from those experiences. It's a
it,
opportunity to raise them, would you say?
I wouldn't say it was either of those things, if I'm honest. I think if you've ever worked in mental health, or actually if you've ever tried to have a conversation with a friend who doesn't like sharing things, right? It it eases that anticipation if your eyes can be on something else, you know, even down to the point of I would always recommend, if you have a difficult conversation to have with a friend, either you do it on a walk or you sit on a bench where you're both facing the same way, so you're not looking at each other. It's much, much easier to talk to someone like that. And so it's more to be able to have something that interests people. I love a board game myself. Um, but then separate to that, it's not necessarily to talk about things to do with sexual. You can talk about anything you want to talk about. It just so happens that the person you're sat next to has had the same or a similar experience to yourself. It's not to compare stories or compare notes or anything like that. It's just to feel a bit more understood.
So obviously it's International Women's Day today.
Mm.
Another study has found that most men aged 18 to 35 think feminism has gone far enough. We've got jobs, we can vote, we can buy property, we can have bank cards. We're not subjugated to just being housewives and mothers. What do you say to this? Do you think there's a need for feminism still?
Is there? Of course there is. That's a insane question. Yeah, there's absolutely a need for feminism. It's one of those. It's things in sight that are okay, because they're things in sight. So we've all agreed that we have to abide by certain things, and in view of everyone, things are fine, and we get on with it, and we do what we're supposed to do. But if you're, for instance, we were, I have some friends, everyone was talking the other day, and I have permission to share this. Um, Everyone was talking, and all of the blokes were talking about how they're worse managers, right? And how they'd been told to stay over time, or they'd been told to do this or that. And the girl in the group pipes up and says, my least favorite manager touched me. And immediately in the room, everyone goes, "Oh, wow, yeah, I guess we're men and you're a woman, and we hadn't even kind of thought about that or on that level or anything like that." And so it's, in theory, sure, we're able to do the same things, but in practice, we certainly aren't. There's a lot of things that are still being missed, and it's a lot harder to do a lot of things as a woman than it is as someone else. And I think when you just share little stories like that and you see the shock on men's faces, you the reality of it hits, that actually things aren't quite as equal as they may appear.
Well, it's the quote, isn't it, that the man's worst fear on a first date is being accused of rape. A woman's worst fear on a first date is being raped. I'm not saying
Mhm.
don't get raped at all, but that I know that is a popular turn of phrase, so to speak. Um, what would you say to victims of sexual assault or rape who are too scared to speak out?
Um, Take your time, you know. It's something that you're gonna know when you're able to. Um, and don't let anyone tell you any different. Um, it's not your responsibility to speak up on it. Your responsibility is to yourself. Um, you don't have a responsibility to talk up so that they can't go and rape another person. That is, that's not yours. That's not yours to bear. They choose that. Okay. So anyone's pushing you to do anything, um, the decision is yours. And it's hard, but there's other people out there that are going to understand. Um, and just treat yourself with a bit of kindness and realize the weight of what you've been through and take your time.